Welcome to season 3 of the Gastric Mindset podcast, everybody, where we should continue to have the same wonderful, inspirational conversations with those who have first-hand experience of going through this journey and those who are professionals within the field. I would love if you could help me grow this tiny podcast. Share it with people who need some mindset support, who are going through bariatric surgery. We know it could be a really lonely journey. So pass it along. Give me a review wherever you listen to your podcast. Send me a DM on Instagram if there's a conversation that you would love to have. I hope you get so much value out of the conversations. And thank you for listening and hanging on with me. I love the podcast, and I hope to bring a lot more value in season 3. Hello everybody, welcome to this week's podcast. Today I'm not only talking to a dietitian who's worked in the bariatric community for many years with NHS experience, but also my own dietitian, I'm excited to say. So, Gillian, welcome to the podcast. Tell us a bit about you and what you do.
Thank you so much for having me, Safi. We have had a little connection recently and it's been great, and it's a privilege to be your dietitian too, so thank you.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm a registered dietitian, and I kind of started out in weight management, moved on to bariatric surgery, and I actually work in eating disorders as well. So I have experience really helping people with their nutrition and their mindset and their overall relationship with food on their bariatric surgery, whether that's right through to post-op, or sometimes I meet people like yourself many years down the line who have never spoken to a dietitian. How did I become a dietitian? I think looking back, I did have a disordered relationship with food in my teens. Then I got really interested in dieting like we all do. And then I got really interested in nutrition. And I actually have a degree in neuroscience. So I did neuroscience first. So I think that's why I'm obsessed with the mind and how the mind works and how it's all connected. And then I went and did my master's in dietetics. So I think part of it was looking for the holy grail and the answer for myself, but also wanting to help other people. And that was very clear for me throughout uni. I was always trying to help friends and family. And, you know, I think we grew up in this world with diet culture and dieting. And now I've kind of changed my opinion on things where we need to move away from that and actually look at kind of our relationship with food and our mindset and optimizing our nutritional intake. So I help people also with eating disorders and disordered eating and bariatric surgery. And sometimes both those worlds collide, and people have surgery who have eating disorders. And, you know, we need that specialist support really for both. So yes, I'm very passionate about what I do. I'm very passionate about helping people. I love seeing people make changes to their behaviours and their thoughts and feelings around food and eating, and just helping them.
Amazing.
Overall.
I love the fact that because I think sometimes, as much as, you know, we love the NHS, but it loves putting everybody into boxes, or, you know, two words can't collide. So it's the bariatric or eating disorder, and we separate everybody into these little tiny boxes where there's no, I don't know, they don't feed into each other at all. But in reality, we're so complex.
Absolutely. Things aren't black and white. And you know, it's really interesting for me because I worked in bariatric surgery before having the eating disorder experience, but now I have the eating disorder experience, I definitely look at things slightly differently. And I was at a conference recently. I spoke at the pre-conference day. It was on obesity, and it was quite good to see both conversations happening amongst professionals. And I think we do need to join up services for people as well. I think, you know, we have to have the ability to refer across services, and we'll talk about how, not everywhere has bariatric surgery in the NHS that's accessible. Not everywhere has eating disorder services that's accessible. And that's really tough for people. And they have to go away and kind of find their own path and their own answers as well.
That makes me so happy that the conversations are finally happening, and that joined up approach. And I'm so glad that, dietitians like you, or, that's the thing, you do all sorts of different variations of supporting the complexity of living with, I think, what I know some people don't like it being called obesity, but that is the medical terminology for it. But that's just really exciting. So at the beginning, when you were training, when did you, so what was your first steps into bariatrics, supporting people in the bariatric world?
I actually went into weight management. So I lived in London and I worked there for like 5 years. And there's different tiered services. So I started out in tier 2 service, actually down in Windsor. And we ran group programs, and I did clinics, individual sessions, supporting people with changing their behaviours. And that was very much about, losing weight to become healthier. Then I went into tier 3 services, which is the next tier in the NHS, which is a multidisciplinary team. So I worked with psychologists, physical activity specialists, and dietitians, and we all worked together, again, doing groups and one-to-one sessions. And then after that, tier 4 is the bariatric surgery section. So I basically went through the tiers, and I know many patients go through the tiers. So it was really good to have experience across the board. Some of the tier 3 services feed into the tier 4 services. So then I moved back to Belfast from London to work in bariatric surgery, and we did some in Belfast because there's actually no services at the minute in Northern Ireland. There's no bariatric services at all, and there hasn't been for years. So people in Northern Ireland have to travel, basically. So we did a few here, and then I also did the service over in Kent. So I would have flown over once a month and did a bariatric support group and did clinics. So I would have done gastric band fills, and then would have been seeing people with gastric sleeves and bypasses as well. So that would have been the clientele I would have been working with. And some were NHS contract, but the ones I worked with were mostly private. It didn't matter, you got the same service, which was good. And within that service, there was psychologists, and dietitians and surgeons and doctors. So it felt like a very good service because you got that MDT assessment beforehand, and then you went through the post-op and having post-op support. So
wow,
that's where I earned my stripes.
Nice. And I'm just shocked, and I'm sure I've heard that because I met a lot of Irish people when I went abroad to have my surgery. I'm just shocked that there just isn't any services at all, and that's something that just is wild. I can't believe it.
It's just to mention on that point, Safi, there is an obesity kind of strategy consultation going on at the moment, and it's out to consultation for services here. So I plan to give my feedback into that, and the idea is that there will be services here. But again, it's been years without anything, so it's really, really needed.
Amazing. Well, that sounds awesome. So in regards to the people that you work with now, what was the kindness? Suppose I know what you're doing with me, so just for context-based purposes, we had a very good, very extensive assessment of where I am 8 years without seeing any kind of dietitian or anybody ever look at my, what I eat, if I have enough protein, my vitamins, my blood work. I haven't had any of that. And I don't think I'm the only person out there. I don't think I'm a unique case out there.
No, unfortunately not. Yeah, I think the assessment's really important, because I see people that could be pre-surgery, they could be 3 months post-op, 2 years, 6 years, 8 years. I have like the whole range of people that I see. And as you say, 8 years and you haven't seen anyone, it's really learning your journey and learning where you've been, what's your relationship with food like, how was that for you to get to the point of having surgery, and then what was your surgery like post-op as well, like your experience post-op. And yes, then optimizing your nutritional intake, we'll work on that. And we'll work on any particular, maybe like triggers people have for things I like to talk about are kind of comfort eating, emotional eating, cravings. We all know about the head hunger, where we want certain things, but why is that happening? And where does that come from? Because our experience with food has happened for a lifetime. We've got childhood experiences that have led us to where we are today. So I think the assessment's really important. I think building rapport, building engagement with someone's really important. Providing a safe space where someone doesn't feel judged. And helping them to be compassionate towards themselves as well is really, really important.
That's great, because I think even if I was coming to you with a weight gain and wanting to deal with that, I would feel I would feel confident to be, because you've got to be so raw and honest about everything. But I know it's not always the same when, you don't know the dietitian, or you're not in a position to be able to pick the dietitian that you want. And then you go through that cycle, or the risk of going through that cycle of being shamed. It's,
let's talk about weight. I think weight stigma and shame and guilt is just such a huge topic. We have to remember that people, like, you don't just wake up and not know that you have a weight problem. You're told about it constantly by everyone, and you live a life where you've been shamed about that, and you're made to feel bad about yourself, and you're made to feel like it's your fault. And what happens is that's internalized, and that affects our behaviors then around food and around eating. So it is really important to tackle that. But I went to an event there, it was by the Irish Patient Society, on weight stigma. And people spoke about their lived experience. And, this is happening in the healthcare system. People are having these experiences with all different healthcare professionals, and it then stops people seeking treatment or advice as well, which is really damaging. And there's known psychological and physiological effects on the body and on the mind from weight stigma. So if you think I might walk into your room and I'm going to be discriminated against for my weight, you're not going to go to that person for help or support.
And then it's going to just go down you're just going to let it escalate until the extent, that regain, or that little bit of something with just a tiny bit of adjustment could have been sorted out. Now it's just going to spiral, and psychologically and physically, the impact, my God.
And do you think that as well, Safi, about, the dieting mentality? Because we had talked about this, where a lot of people have been on this journey of dieting for their whole life. And we live in diet culture everywhere. And then you have surgery. And I think one of the biggest pieces of mindset work I have to do with people is moving away from that. And I think it's so, so hard when you've always been like on a wagon, off a wagon, all or nothing, good, bad foods. You kind of have to undo all of that stuff, So it's like, that's not going to happen overnight. And it's kind of recognizing the patterns, even like someone coming to me and saying, oh, I went to McDonald's, and I'm like, I'm not the food police. That's fine. You're not doing that every day. It's about putting things in context as well. And I don't know what your experience was of that. I think we kind of spoke a lot about dieting. Like, I think, when you've done every single diet, it's like, how do you change that mindset after surgery?
It's really difficult. And I think for, when you've been on every single diet and it's something you've done for years and years, it's really scary to almost, it's like almost leaving a religion or leaving a cult. Because that's all you've ever known. And I saw a thread yesterday and somebody said, I'm going back to Slimming World. This thread on Facebook, it had nothing actually to do with weight, but it went on hundreds and hundreds of comments of these people saying, well, you wouldn't be going back if you worked. And then the other people swearing he worked. Absolutely. And goodness me, it's so, people get so drawn in. It becomes part of our identity as these dietists that are, I'm on Slimming World, I'm on my green, I'm on my sin free, and it becomes part of you. And I think for me now, seeing the pain in other people, it's really difficult being online and seeing people who are very, very smart and you think, oh, but please just think about it. You had 80% of your stomach that just physically removed, and you're gonna go back. And I find that really hard, Gillian, because I just want to shout. I just want to shake everybody. It didn't work. It didn't work the first time, second time, 100th time. Let's not go back. Let's try something different. So with your clients, do you see people coming to try you out, but being like, ultimately, I'm going to go back on something else?
I think I see people falling into patterns that I feel like I need to really help them with. So one, when someone's really been in the dieting mentality, a lot of those people undereat post-op because they get into the high of the weight loss and they've been used to being standing on scales and kind of, in that world. So actually the challenge can be getting those people to eat enough and eat regularly enough and to get enough nutrition in and to deal with the side effects of maybe like hair loss or low energy levels or whatever it is. Other people can get into the way of like grazing all day. They're not having proper meals, and like it's like, okay, right, we need to look at like having a meal, having a period of time without a meal, then having another meal. And then other people can do that thing where you kind of don't eat all day and then all your calories are kind of in the evening and you're trying to work to spread it out. So I would say like troubleshooting a lot for like falling into different habits is really important. I do understand the dieting mentality because I had it too whenever I was a teenager and in my 20s and probably even up to my 30s, and I understand going back to it because you're being sold the dream. You're being sold the dream, and it's like the perfect marketing strategy ever. Because it's like when it's working, they take the success and they take the win. This person's done this diet, they're winning at life. They've joined us, they're in the cult, they're successful. When you feel it's your fault, they're not saying it's their fault. But what we know, like we know diets don't work. Like we know, 95%, if not more, people not only regain more weight, and then even today I was talking to people and they're like, if the weight's higher up after each diet, so it's just that thing of recognizing that. But then whenever your thoughts start spiraling and your weight's going up and you're like, that's the answer, I have to go back to it. I do understand that, and I don't default to anybody for going back to the dieting because I think it is a hamster wheel, and I think you do go round and round it and you think it's the answer. But I think what ultimately dieting does is it makes you distrust your body, and it makes you move away from your internal signals to the external. And what we need to bring it back to is you listening to your body and to get back to, am I feeling satisfied? Am I feeling full? Am I eating beyond the point of being satisfied? Am I feeling stuffed? Do I have, it's really the internal cues and trusting yourself, which is difficult with both bariatric surgery and disordered eating or eating disorders, because bariatric surgery, you don't feel hunger after it initially, and all of that has to resettle. And then with eating disorders, your hunger hormones go all over the place too. So I do think people need support and guidance throughout both, really.
Definitely. What is your percentage? What do you think? Just a guess, just a intellectual guess, but what do you think of percentage of people who have weight loss surgery are likely to have had also some form of eating disorder or disordered eating?
Well, the stat that I read recently was it something like 55 or 60% of people that go for treatment within a weight management service have binge eating, have a form of binge eating, maybe not full-blown binge eating disorder, which I couldn't quite believe that, because if 2/3 of people going for weight management, services have binge eating problems, then there's a high likelihood those going for weight loss surgery do too. And then in terms of the other eating disorders, I wouldn't know off the top of my head about those, but I think there's a major overlap.
Yeah.
And as you say, you can't put people into boxes. It doesn't work like that. So when you're thinking about services, you need to think like, where can people get the help they need? And it's not to say if you have issues with binge eating, you shouldn't have surgery, but you would want to be working on that stuff beforehand and being supported even more throughout the surgery process.
And I think the hardest thing is when you are somebody who's desperate to lose the weight, like I was, the idea of dealing with the disordered eating wasn't going to satisfy me. I needed to lose the weight to have that, even that brain space. And that's why I tell my clients, sometimes the weight loss surgery, because I had a client that asked me if I would, if with what I know now, would have I had the weight loss surgery? But I said, I think if I was occupied with my weight, like how to the extent I was obsessed with, I wouldn't have the space to learn and to implement so you need the psychological space of not worrying about your physical weight in order to deal with it. What do you think of that?
I think that's a really valid point, because I also think when you're dieting and it's constant obsession about food and numbers and this number on the scale, I don't think you have headspace for other things. And it would be different for everybody. In an ideal world, you would get the disordered eating sorted out before you'd go near surgery. But, this isn't an ideal world, and places don't have services, and you have to go somewhere else maybe to have the surgery. And, I think it's probably different for everybody and to the extent of the problems. But I think that is a really valid point. If you're so filled up with the weight, it's like you can't see, what's that saying, the wood for the trees. You're kind of you're too in it.
Yeah.
To be able to zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
But then that's where I think the help and support is essential. So, that's where having a team or have somebody you can speak to about what you're dealing with. I mean, it's a massive life change. It's a very transitional period. And, as well, we always talk about the head taking longer to catch up, than your body and your shape changes, and people are maybe commenting and things, and in your head, you're still like this person that, is in a larger body. And even the psychological adaptation to that can be quite hard for people. They're still buying, like some of my clients will be like, I'm still buying, bigger clothes. And then I'm getting home and be like, they don't fit me. But in my head, I'm still that size.
Yeah. So do you see a lot of people for body dysmorphia then?
I think body dysmorphia definitely comes into it. I suppose that's kind of the other way, isn't it? Where you're smaller and you say, what do you think
yes. Yeah, sorry. It's. I guess it will show up in the sense that you now have lost 10 stones, but you still see yourself as, as you're 18.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
You're okay.
Yeah, as you still see yourself as your original weight.
Yes.
And a lot of people, I think, really struggle with that.
I think they do. I think you're right, actually. Yeah, body image issues. I think it's kind of part and parcel of the dieting side of things or disordered eating. I think it all goes together. Your thoughts, your feelings, and your beliefs around your body, really do drive behaviours around food and eating.
Yeah.
And actually, you need to tackle all the behaviours. A lot of people that I work with would be body checking or checking in the mirror a lot. And sometimes that drives the way they eat too. So you kind of have to look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and I think especially now, January is the ultimate month where everybody, because you can't forget, it's so cultural. Whether you have whether you've gone through any of this or you're just somebody who just happened to have had a bit too much chocolate, then you want to lose weight because obviously we're going to be going on our holidays. So if what would you say to somebody who's realizes that something's not quite right and they're struggling a little bit with wanting to eat, like I shared with you this morning, wanting to eat, find themselves stressing a little bit and maybe not eating enough during the day, and then going back to those kind of, maybe hiding food or eating a couple of chocolate bars at one time, or in my case, I think I told you when I get stressed, sometimes I do want to go and have a couple of donuts. How could somebody like me tackle that if it's something that's kind of returning in 2 years out, 3 years out,
The first thing I would say is it's so important when you work with someone with bariatric surgery is to set expectations. We need to expect a return to old habits. I call it diet creep, where you start to creep back to your old diet and your old diet or your old habits. And the first part of any of that is recognizing it's happening and awareness around the fact it's happening. I think, the tendency is to, again, feel shame and guilt about that and bury your head in the sand and just try to ignore it. But it's like if you've came to see someone who's supporting you and they've said, do you know what? We expect at some point you're going to have a little bit of a blip, or we expect that some habits will creep back in. I'm telling you now so that when it happens, you will go, oh, Gillian said that was going to happen, right? I need to go and speak to her. Because what I used to find when I worked in the other service, they would just stop coming to appointments. And it's like the worst thing you could do. It's like, do not stop going to appointments. The people that do the best, are kind of coming to appointments, they're engaging, they're chatting. When things aren't going right, they're expressing it like you did, So for me, it's like awareness over the behaviour. And then something really easy to do is just be making a little bit of a note of what's happening. Get curious. So this is happening on a Wednesday at 3:00. I'm really stressed out. I've deadlines at work. I'm going, I'm picking up the kids. I'm doing. So what's happening? What do I need in that moment? Do I need to be soothed? Do I need another strategy to help me? Do I need something else? Is my diet not adequate enough? Am I not adequately fueled? Do I have low blood sugars? So it's about getting curious in the moment about what is going on. And then it's about going back to basics, the basic foundation of the bariatric surgery, kind of, I like to call like the blueprint or your plan post-op. Things like eating regularly and getting enough protein in, making sure that you're well hydrated, that you're not starting to rely on the kind of things that go down dead easy. That when those things start, the slider foods or the crumbly foods that go down easy, you're like, oh, maybe I need to get more protein in. Maybe I do need a bit more in terms of to lift my energy levels. So I would say awareness is the first step. And just being curious. I think that's where being compassionate towards yourself. It's okay. It's a blip. We thought this was going to happen. And then going back to like the foundations of the post-op kind of advice. I think if you get to that place, it's probably a good time to reach out for help from somebody as well, because you can do it on your own, absolutely. But as you say, maybe a dietitian, a therapist, counsellor, whoever that can really help you, because habits always serve a purpose and they serve a function. And it's hard to unpick all of that sometimes on your own. Although you can.
As somebody that's obviously, in this, and I work with other people, I'm in it, I'm, learning about it all the time. But sometimes to see yourself, that's why doctors don't see themselves. They go and see another doctor. And cars need MOTs. Everything needs and I think looking at it that way, actually, it's just upkeep. It's just being kind to myself before I get to a point I've gained weight. And actually that brings me nicely into number one. What do you suggest about protein? I struggle sometimes with all the protein, the options of all the protein shakes and the bars. And I'm not going to lie, sometimes it does trigger me a little bit because it reminds me of Lighter Life, like we discussed this morning. So I don't, some of them. So what do you think of shakes? How dependent should we be on shakes and bars to get our protein?
The first thing I'll just say is you literally have quoted what I say to people about a yearly appointment.
Right.
So when you're past your 2 years post-op, I say to everybody, go for a yearly appointment, because if it does nothing else, it'll remind you to get all your blood tests done. You can think of it as an MOT or a service for the car. This is for your body. And if the only thing in that, you get your bloods and you get someone to check them. But ideally, you get like your diet reviewed and you kind of review where you're at. I think that's a really, really good point. Long-term post-op, I think it's really good. In terms of protein, 2 words, food first.
Okay.
I always go food first. So the time when shakes can help, especially, is in the pureed stage, if they're topping you up. But the way I work with people is I gradually build their protein up. I think it can be really stressful when you are first post-op trying to hit protein targets. I think especially if you came from a dieting world and you're used to obsessing about numbers, I don't think it's helpful handing out numbers post-op. As you move beyond the 3 months post-op, then having to think about building up your protein intake to hit your, specific target worked out for you. Again, bars to me are kind of like glorified chocolate bars. They're on the go, convenient option if really needed, grand. But I think there's so many other things that you can do, that you can have. Even just talking to someone today about having wee pots of nuts and they were getting yogurt in, and if you think about the nutrition you're going to get out of like your vitamins and your minerals that are going to be better absorbed from food, then yes, all that stuff's added to protein shakes. But from whole food, your body is going to break that down, and there's going to be better absorption from it. So if you're kind of thinking, you're chicken, meat, eggs, lentils, beans, all of those options are going to be the best option. And then I would put anything that's kind of a supplement, like it's a supplement, it's to supplement the diet as opposed to being a constant feature. The other issue, I was talking to, again, another client today to say about the protein powders, there can be a lot of sweeteners added to them. The sweeteners aren't bad per se, but there has been research to show that when your brain gets, sweetness from sweeteners, it's waiting for the calories to follow. So what it can actually do is cause more cravings or make you crave more sweet things. So I just keep a wee eye on the sweeteners and things. And then you can also have, some people can have really negative gut effects of the sweeteners and of the protein bars. It could be very bloated, very gassy, and it really upsets the balance of, for whatever reason, their gut bacteria. So again, there's no right or wrong answers. There's no definitive you should always have them, you should never have them. It's a grey area, but I think go for food first, and then they can be an option if needed and if your body tolerates them.
Okay, amazing. And it makes me dump a lot. They make me dump. I think it just, which is very, I don't know why. I think it's just the sweetener. Maybe my gut just doesn't like them. I don't know.
Yeah, well, interestingly, some sweeteners have been shown to raise blood sugars. So we thought before all sweeteners were like the same and like they had no effect on blood sugar, but some do. So if you're somebody that's quite sensitive to the blood sugars going up and going down, and you would have dumping after sweet things, you may get a reaction with sweeteners. And like dumping is horrible. You kind of have, it's all like that, having a hypo almost if you were diabetic and feeling sweaty and shaky and that you need to sit down, and it's not a nice experience. But what clients tell me when that happens, they know they're never eating that thing again, whatever it was. and it's usually a dose response. You might, a wee bit of it might be okay, but like too much of it, it's quantity and the food type.
Yeah. Okay, another thing is I always love to ask anybody that I speak to who would know is about pouch resets. Number one, if I came to you and said I wanted to do a pouch reset and go back to my let's say the liquid diet or the liver shrinking diet, what would you say to me?
I have to say, I feel like this is a thing talked about amongst bariatric clients and patients and on online groups. It's not a thing within anywhere I've worked. It's not talked about as a thing for professionals. It's like this myth. I think it's a unicorn that people chase. I don't know. You probably know more about it than me.
So it's something we secretly discuss on Facebook.
Yeah,
groups.
it's like this secret thing, and I'm like, what's this thing everyone's discussing? To me, do you know what it feels like? Dieting. It just feels like going right back to dieting. Yes. That thing where you're like, it's been Christmas, I need to do a detox. That's how I view it.
Yeah.
I would really go back to the basics of protein, regular eating, and that.
Yeah.
What do you see the pouch reset as? What it actually?
I really struggle with it because it also differs in which country the conversation is happening. So it's not just social media. Also, if you're on the more American side, the thing it's fascinating. But I struggle with the bit about, that bit I just think it's us going back to that, let's do 3 days of keto, or let's go hardcore, no carbs before marbs. Let's just, it's that kind of...
When they say reset, is it the idea of shrinking it again or?
So some people think that actually the pouch because some people really do think, and I know it can happen if there's something wrong with the operation, and I know there's muscles, I don't know, we're not doctors, but some people really do think that the pouch has stretched. They have broken their pouch, they have stretched it, now they have a normal stomach, and they hope to shrink it back because somebody one day sold them a potion of resetting their pouch?
Yeah, you see, I think the reality is the pouch can stretch, and sleeves can stretch, and there are things that will make them stretch, like fizzy drinks, are one we just kind of say to stay away from. Overeating, pushing portions beyond kind of the side plate size, frequently and over time could cause the stomach or the pouch to stretch. Physiologically, when that happens, the anatomy of the stomach, I don't think anything dietary that you would do would actually make it smaller again. I think it's something that just, to me, that's revisional surgery at that point. So that would be my understanding. If somebody's selling you something for a pouch reset, it's a scam.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just going to say it. I don't even need to look at what it is. It's a scam. It's marketing 101.
Yes.
If you think about, like, we just spoke about Christmas and the New Year, like Christmas is flipping the food industry, marketing, eat this, oh, you deserve it, reward yourself, overindulge, all that language. January, dad industry, boom. Go on this diet, join this gym, restrict. And I feel like the pouch reset is somewhere in that of like selling the dream.
Yeah, I know, it's beautifully done. And we don't know who started it or where it's come from. I'm sure somebody discussed 10 years ago, and I haven't seen anybody selling it, but it's still that it's so strong. The messaging was so strong that it's in there. It's now become ingrained within the variety community, and we then repeat it to each other, and then we perpetuate it and lovely put salt in it, pepper on it, shake it about, then send that message along.
I suppose like all things have to start somewhere, don't they? And I think it might be a bit more of an American thing as well. I don't think it's anything I ever came across when I worked for like 5 years in bariatric surgery. I don't think I ever heard it. It must
they
be
were
quite
missing a trick.
new. Yeah.
The NHS was right behind on that one. I just think sometimes, because a lot of these people also, and it makes me really sad that we're in these groups and they're closed groups, but then people still can't write in like under anonymous rather than their name, because the shame is so, I guess, overwhelming for them to, for a bunch of strangers who don't really know them, but that's how strong those shame feelings are and how deep ingrained it is. So when I see that, I feel sad for the person who just didn't have that confidence to just say, well, I just need a bit of support, guys. This is just happening. How can I resolve it? So almost detach themselves and their identity from just something that you need a bit of support with, to I'm a failure. I've messed up again. I've messed up. I've fallen off the wagon.
Yeah.
I've sinned. All those. All those kinds.
I know. And again, I think, that's a hard place to be in, isn't it? And people just need help then, and help and support with it. And sometimes I think after surgery, you can just feel like you're left. You're left to your own devices. I know people have came to me that have went to other countries and been given like the advice in that language, and that they just don't know what to do or what to eat, or so I think it's recognizing that people will need support throughout this, and you need to not feel on your own with it. So the support groups definitely do have a place as well.
No, definitely. And people, get lots from it, and especially the ones that are managed really well. I don't know if you've come across Ken and Obesity UK. Yeah, you have, haven't you? That one is really managed really well, and I think that's a really healthy place. But I have been to other places where everybody's my God.
Ken Clare, he's lovely. I met him at the obesity conference again there in Belfast. I think he won an award for all his work and everything. So yes, very good. Yeah.
He's got a good group. I can't remember if it's called the metabolic. I can't remember what it's called, but I know the clinics, actually the NHS send people there and they get certificates for attending. I actually did a talk in one of the support groups. So they have loads of different people who go. So that's really beautifully managed. The rest...
It might be good. I was just thinking, Safi, it might be good to put some of the links if you can do that on your
Sure.
podcast. Just
Yeah,
some of
actually,
the,
yeah, just in case people don't. I take it for granted that everybody knows that all these places
yeah,
exist. So clever idea. So just before we let you, because I could talk to you forever about these things.
I know, so
But,
could I.
before I let you go for this episode, I just wonder, how can we help somebody who just doesn't know, who doesn't have the means to come to, be able to get support privately, who's perhaps had weight loss surgery abroad, whether it's Turkey, Belgium, anywhere else, and who just feels a bit, the GP is not taking them seriously, or and they just feel that they're losing their way. Obviously, come to my podcast for sure. This is it. And then Gillian, I know you're on Instagram also.
Yeah, come look on Instagram, if, as well.
Yeah. Where could we start when we feel a bit like that and just feel a bit like I've messed up again? I've regained some weight.
I think, do you mean actual advice?
No,
I
guess just general advice, because I interviewed a American dietitian, and she's like, I'm not giving direct advice to anybody. I was like, no, that's not what I want. I just think very, because you forget in America, it's all very, nobody wants to get sued. Nobody sue Gillian, please. Or anybody on my podcast.
No suing, please.
No, we're not prescribing anything, but I just like to put myself in that position where I'm listening to a podcast. I love when somebody says something and it triggers, oh, okay, I've got a bit of hope. There's 2 steps or 3 steps or something I can take away and I can kind of run away with. So if we use me as that example, let's say I've gained half a stone, it's coming back a bit quicker. My appetite is increasing. I'm wanting, those cravings are returning a little bit. My GP just kind of fobs me off and is like, and I don't know who else to turn to. I've had weight loss surgery abroad. And what can I do? What's my first steps that you think I should do?
I think from the nutritional side of things, definitely go back to the absolute basics, after surgery, of eating regularly. For me, that's the foundation for somebody who's had surgery or they haven't had surgery. When you're having these big long gaps, that's going to be more of a trigger maybe for cravings, or low blood sugars and things like that. So eating regularly, definitely. Get curious yourself, keep a wee food and mood diary, write down what you're having and your feelings. When are the cravings worse? What are you feeling? What's triggering reaching for certain foods? A bit of curiosity in a non-judgmental and kind and compassionate way, and to try to get some information on what's the problem and I also love empowering people with a bit of problem solving skills of what's come up, what's happened, what can I do differently. I would definitely reach out, whether it's in a group, a Facebook group, as you say, free resources, wherever you can find them. I know we were on video for the bariatric support centre. That there is taken off as well. Also in terms of advice
affordable
and support.
Well, isn't it? Yeah, I think it's quite affordable.
Yeah. I think it's going to be very affordable. And don't forget about the blood test and your supplements too, because if you need to optimize deficiencies, that might be having an effect on the way you're feeling and cravings and things too. So at a very basic level, you could go get a set of bloods done and make sure you're on the right supplements and things too. So
amazing.
Oh, fluids is the other thing, because a lot of people don't drink enough. The fluids, and obviously the eating and drinking separately and all of that, and all of your rules around that.
Obviously,
the fluids.
It's obviously a problem I don't have. Yeah, right.
I was not pointing fingers.
I point myself out. I'm so bad at it. It's just, actually, it's really difficult. I almost feel like I need somebody to walk behind me. To tap, drink some water.
I know. But if
So
you're thinking about weight regain, think about protein, fiber, and fluids.
lovely.
Optimize those and optimize your supplements as well, and that will really help.
And something you said to me, which I was really excited about, is that actually you would subscribe, or to me, not to anybody else, but that, you have those things that you may crave at different times, whether it's chocolate, whether it's the donut, whether, having a balanced view of varied food that you like. And that feels really, really good. So do you think?
Yes, because what I think happens with bariatric surgery, people diet their whole lives and have this relationship with food. And then it's like you're expected to just be a robot and eat in a certain robotic way. And then if you eat something that's deemed bad, which there are no good or bad foods, you go back down spiraling into guilt and shame. So I'm like, how do we remove that? And in a nutshell, I would say get in what you need and have a little bit of what you want, and balance it. And it's not about being out of control again. It's just saying that, sometimes you're going to want something that, maybe isn't deemed the healthiest, but like, that's okay. You don't need to beat yourself up about it. And you're not doing it every day, so that's okay. I don't think you'd be a human being if you didn't want things that like taste good and, as well. And I think we have to remember that food is so much more than just fuel. It's about socializing, it's about connection to others, it's about celebration. And sometimes after bariatric surgery, we suck the fun out of food. And I'm like, yeah, how do we get what we need in and optimize? Yes, behaviors that are going to keep us in a good place long term, but balance that with still like having a bit of fun too, and being with our families and being with our friends and going on holidays and all the rest of it. So it's just about balancing it all.
Amazing. That sounds brilliant. So where could we find you? How could we work with you? And I wondered, Gillian, if for example, I was somebody who just wanted to work with somebody because I had limited funds, could we just do a couple of sessions and, is that a possibility, or is it, I would have to book with you for so many months, or how accessible are you to people? I guess that's what I want to say.
Yeah, it's really dependent. I mean, on what people need or want. But yes, I would probably see people for an assessment and minimum of like maybe 2 sessions after that. So I definitely do packages of 3 sessions, 6 sessions, and then other people might book like 12 and spread them out. So yeah, really whatever anyone needs. Someone might just come for an assessment and have 1 appointment, but most will book a couple over a few months just to help with change and things. If you just want information, you could have an assessment and have 1 follow-up. What else? Yes, you can find me on Instagram, Dietitian Gillian UK. Find me on Twitter as Dietitian Gillian.
And don't let Mr. come and sue you.
I'm like, it'll always be Twitter in my mind. I don't know about you, but it always will be.
Don't let him come after you, Gillian.
Oh yeah, sorry, Twitter stroke. Oh, sorry, X. But yes, so yeah, just find me on Instagram, and yeah, me and you will probably do Instagram live or something at some point.
Fantastic. And I will put all your details at the bottom of the episode. And have you got any availabilities now? Are you open for clients?
Yeah, I am indeed. I have availability over the next few months. So yeah, fantastic. I'm open for business.
Lovely. That's amazing. So I'll put your details at the bottom of the show, and then DM Gillian if you want an appointment. I highly recommend her. And then definitely we'll be back for more episodes because we've got so much to talk about. I could do almost an hour talking about vitamins and the lack of and what happens to your body afterwards.
I know.
And also how it shows up in different people. For example, just, I was telling you about struggling with water and the acid and, I'm sure I'm not the only person that has all these, so many different side effects of,
I have to say, symptom management is a big thing I deal with. And I don't even know how I really got into that, just because it's part of it. It's just part of it.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm not a doctor. If you need to refer to a doctor, that's fine. But there may be bits and pieces I can help with, because there's the common side effects. So we could do a whole episode on that.
Fantastic. Everybody, you heard it here. You come back for it when Gillian comes back. Well, thank you so much. I don't know, Gillian, but I may be the only bariatric podcast in the UK. I have not found one.
Right. Oh, well, I need to get my own one. You'll have to be my first guest.
Yay! But, if I'm wrong, everybody let me know. DM me on Gastric Mindset. But I really don't, I can't find anybody else.
The number one bariatric
we called
podcast.
It Whoa! It's by default because I am the only one. But and then you can
love it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
I appreciate you for being here with me. I hope you got some value from this episode. If so, please give me a review. It will make me super happy and support others from our community to find the podcast. Share it with your Barry bestie. Connect with me on Instagram at Gastric Mindset. It'll be wonderful to hear from you.